We have tons of news to talk about here in today's video. We have the latest trade rumors focusing today on Toronto, Ottawa, Chicago, and Minnesota. The latest UFA rumblings around players like Patrick Kane and Jake Guentzel. Plus, we have updates on some potential buyouts, including players like Jeff Skinner, Cam Atkinson. Plus, we have Goodrow, the Rangers, on waivers. That could possibly also lead to a buyout. Some rumblings around the head coaching position in the Columbus Blue Jackets organization. Big news out of Carolina on the GM position. And of course, Game 5 tonight, a Stanley Cup coming out over the Oilers extended series. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have tons of stuff to cover here today. Let's first start by having a quick discussion and preview here on Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final, going later tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. Is the Stanley Cup coming out tonight, or are the Edmonton Oilers going to extend the series is the big question. We talked about this in Game 4 because the Panthers had an opportunity to sweep, and the Oilers at home completely blew out the Panthers and had a dominant performance. Now, the odds bettors and all the different apps where you can make your bets are all favoring Florida tonight. It is a common thing to see where you have a team on the road having a chance to sweep a series and don't end up getting it done, and then end up going back and winning Game 5. It's something that you see a lot. Now, of course, the Oilers don't want to see that narrative. They want to try to win this in 7 games. They're going to take this one game at a time. I would suggest we're going to see the Florida Panthers, who had a dud of a game on Game 4, come out all cylinders firing here in Game 5. They're at home. They already had their first chance to clinch the cup, to get rid of the nerves. Different scenario. They're going to have their fans, their building behind them tonight. I suggest they're going to come out just crazy strong to start the game, and the Oilers are going to have to just try to get through the first 5-10 minutes, one shift at a time. I'm not sure that'll be like in survival mode, but certainly don't want to give up a couple of early ones to the home team. That's the last thing they want to see happen, and then they can slowly, kind of get into the game and find. If they can get through the first 10 minutes and either have a lead or have a 0-0, that would be a good road start for the Oilers, and they can kind of pick away here. But you got to wonder, did they get in Bobrovsky's head? Did they, obviously find some things that they're going to expect Florida to make adjustments here? And can the Oilers play like they did in Game 4? They were winning the board battles. The effort was there. Their backs were against the wall, and they showed it. Some wondering about Evander Kane, if he'll get back in tonight. I know he's been dealing with a pretty serious injury. So, in all honesty, I probably wouldn't tinker with a winning lineup, but I'm not sure what Coach Chris Knoblauch is going to do. So let me know your thoughts. Is the Stanley Cup coming out tonight, or are the Oilers going to extend the series as the game gets underway at 8 o'clock Eastern time? Lots of other news today, all kinds of stuff. We got the Carolina Hurricanes today confirming that Eric Tulsky is now the full-time general manager of the club. Of course, we had heard the rumors in the last few days that they had already let other candidates that they talked to know that they were going to be handling this internally. And, of course, Eric Tulsky would be the guy, considering he was already the interim general manager here. Obviously, if you look at his resume, his background's a bit of a unique path to becoming a GM. Very extremely smart, well-educated guy. Like I said, I know a lot of analytics people are especially quite happy to see a shift here and see an opportunity with his kind of background get this chance. So, of course, that's officially been confirmed now by the Carolina Hurricanes. Big news on the waiver wire. It's not something we expected here, but the Rangers have placed veteran depth forward Goodrow on waivers. Now, Goodrow has not really been the greatest contract. They brought him in as a big UFA signing. Of course, he was part of the Lightning when they were winning the Stanley Cup. He really good in certain situations. He's a good playoff performer, but unfortunately, Goodrow has not had great regular seasons the past 2 years. In that 6-year contract he signed with the Rangers as a UFA, hasn't really aged well. Now, this most recent playoff run, again, he was good, but it's you can't justify that kind of money in term just for the playoffs. You need more, and I'm not sure when personally GMs are going to learn that you don't give that kind of term to bottom six forwards as much as you like them. Unfortunately, like that's why the silly season, as they call it, on July 1st, you see a lot of GMs make some of their biggest mistakes. And I don't blame the Rangers and Chris Drury for going after Goodrow, but 6 years was a bit much. And, making over $3.5 million, 3.64, also a little rich, but I can understand the pedigree that they thought they were getting, obviously, like I said. And it's not that he hasn't been a good addition to the team, brought that winning, culture from Tampa and all that, but it's a lot of money, a lot of term for what you get. So he's on waivers. Obviously, they can bury his contract as a minor league, affiliate here if they need to. They can technically demote him to get some cap space, but it's expected that this is kind of a opportunity for a team to take the full contract off their hands to see if somebody will take him for free. So I would suspect that there's probably already been ongoing trade discussions around the player. Would somebody take him with retained salary? That might be another option. Or, like I said, the buyout window is going to open here 48 hours after the cup is awarded. So, being today on Tuesday, if the Panthers win the cup tonight, well, then a couple days time later this week, we're going to have a first buyout window open. So, he certainly is considered by many to be a buyout candidate. So the Rangers are looking to move off the Barclay Goodrow contract one way or another to create some space. They got a lot of things they need to do. They don't have a ton of flexibility, both internally and externally, that they want to do. So we'll see what happens with Goodrow. We'll find out at this time, noon Eastern or 2 o'clock Eastern, tomorrow, if a team claims him and takes the whole contract. And if not, we'll have to follow that to see if it'll lead to maybe a trade or a buyout. So big news there out of New York. Another potential buyout, according to Elliot Friedman. A lot of rumblings out of Buffalo that Jeff Skinner is a serious candidate for a buyout. And of course, we know Skinner ended up in Buffalo after being traded there from Carolina. Had a real big 40-goal season. Got this massive contract, $9 million AAV over the long term, 8 years, I think it was. And, he's had his moments where he's played well. But the first part of the contract was horrible. And then he seemed to find his game again. He had back-to-back 30-goal seasons, 30 and 35, I think it was. And then last year, his production really dipped down to 46 points total. So certainly, a fresh start, perhaps. I mean, he's only 32. He went straight to the NHL after being drafted, and he wasn't even a super high pick. He's already got 1,000 games in already. He hit that earlier this season. He does have a full no-move clause as well, so trading him is not easy. There's some people thinking that getting this news out there through the media might be a case of, making, posturing a little bit, saying, okay, well, if he's aware that he's going to get bought out, maybe he'll be inclined to waive. But will they even be able to find a trade? At $9 million, there's no way they're moving the full cap hit. But they could retain and move that way. But even then, I think it's going to be challenging. If you look at the breakdown of how a buyout will work, I'm not sure that even trading him with 50% retained makes the most sense. So we will obviously see how that works out. I mean, in some cases, if you look at the Barclay Goodrow buyout scenario, a little bit different than the Jeff Skinner one. In Goodrow's case, a buyout would actually give them a cap credit for the coming season. So I'll show you the scenario here from how the buyout calculator would work. And the reason for that is sometimes you get a negative amount on the buyout calculator, which results in a cap credit. So essentially what it is you get the cap hit minus the base salary plus the buyout costs. So when you have a contract structured where you have an AAV that's much lower than the actual salary in a given year, you'll get that. That happens sometimes, especially, and depending on how the contract's structured, right? And depending on the point in time when you do the buyout. So essentially his salary for next year is much higher than the actual cap hit. So that results in a negative cap charge. So they would not only get rid of the full cap hit for next year, but they would get additional credit on top of that of $247,000. So now in the case of Skinner, structured a little bit differently, not necessarily going to happen, but there's a couple of guys here that could end up as pretty solid buyout. So we'll find out here soon enough what things are going to be moving forward with these two players. But another guy to watch as well is Flyers' Cam Atkinson, another potential buyout candidate that we had talked about. Now, when I did my buyout video a few days ago, I didn't put Skinner or Goodrow on there. I thought Goodrow was somebody seriously considered. I just didn't think they would pull the trigger on him, because as much as they get a cap hit this year, cap credit, a couple years from now it does go up. And I just didn't know that. My thought was, as much as his regular seasons haven't been great, his playoffs have been really good. I just wasn't sure that the Rangers would go down that route, but it looks like they are. In the case of Cam Atkinson, the Flyers definitely look like they want to move on. It looks like he wants to move on from what we've heard as well. There is trade interest from the San Jose Sharks apparently, but belief is that he's not real crazy about going there. So a buyout is still very much a real possibility as well. We did talk about him in our buyout video from a few days back. So Flyers, Atkinson, definitely in the mix. There's a possibility they don't and he stays. They don't absolutely need to do it from their own cap perspective, but just to give him the freedom and flexibility to find a new start somewhere else. So we'll see where that goes. If another team will take him besides San Jose, maybe another team that he's more open to going to, maybe a trade does end up coming together. Some rumblings around the Columbus Blue Jackets open coaching position. Don Waddell does actually have a press conference booked for Thursday as well, which is I guess is raising some eyebrows. I don't know, based on what we've seen, though, it doesn't necessarily mean that he already has his new coach lined up. That would have come together very quickly. It's quite possible it could be just a pre-draft, off-season outlook type of availability. We'll have to see. We'll probably know more on that likely tomorrow. But names that are out there in the rumor mill for potential candidates that could be under people that Waddell will consider hiring for the Columbus coaching spot include Jeff Blashill, who we mentioned yesterday when the news first broke. Todd McClellan's name is out there. Gerard Gallant. Another name mentioned is Claude Julien. And another one is Bob Hartley. Bob Hartley hasn't coached in the NHL in some time, but he did work with Waddell back when they were in Atlanta together. So it is remotely a possibility that we could see a candidate like him maybe in the mix as well. So we'll see. The Jackets will do their search and let us know when the decision's been made here on that front. Some other news around. We have a couple signings as well. The Ottawa Senators today confirmed they've signed young defenseman Max Gannett, who was a restricted free agent. Gannett had a real nice season for them in the American Hockey League. Started the season as the number 7 defenseman on the NHL roster. Get a little bit of action. Certainly looks like he has a future with the club. He gets a 1-year, 2-way contract. The NHL salary is league minimum $775 and $120,000 at the American Hockey League level. In the St. Louis Blues, they also confirmed they've signed young pending RFA defenseman Scott Perunovich. He gets a 1-year deal, a $1.15 million as well. So lots of interesting tidbits there all around the NHL on that front. Some UFA talk. We got a variety of names that are out there getting some interest in the rumor mill is kind of really picking up. A couple of big names, especially in the case of Jake Guentzel. We'll talk about Patrick Kane here in just a minute. I know Frank Saravalli reported today that he fully suspects when opening of free agency on July 1 that the Vancouver Canucks will be front and center trying their best to get Jake Guentzel to come to Vancouver. Heavy interest there. Of course, we know they're in process right now of likely losing a bunch of players, which is in some ways going to give them flexibility. In some ways, it's going to really change the dynamic of the team. We even heard Rick Tocchet, the head coach, even mentioned that it's quite possible they could have at least 6 or 7 different players in their roster next year. But of course, with all the connections to the former Penguins in Vancouver, they know this player extremely well. Worked with them before. The coach knows him. The GM knows him. The president knows him. Obviously a few players on the roster have played with him before too. And belief is he's very much open to it. So we'll see. They're not going to be the only team, of course. Guentzel's going to get a lot of interest. There is some talk. Teams like Washington will have interest. I know Saravalli also mentions the Rangers. Again, I can see the interest, but from a cap perspective, that would be challenging to say the least, barring some other moves, of course. And then, of course, another team that was mentioned was Toronto. Again, Toronto seems to be in on everybody, according to some insiders, but Saravalli says the only way Guentzel would be a serious consideration for the Leafs is if they do proceed with a Mitch Marner trade. If they don't move Marner by the opening of free agency, then there's just no way they'd be able to do it. So if Marner is dealt and they don't have a big ticket contract coming back, then Guentzel would be somebody they would target in free agency, which makes sense, I guess. But like I said, a Marner trade is going to be complicated. It could happen for sure. Hard to say if it does, when it could. So we'll have to wait and see where things go on that front. But Guentzel will have lots of interest, no doubt. Of course, another name, like I mentioned, Patrick Kane. Sarah Valley also links him to the New York Rangers, of course, who we played with at the deadline 2 seasons back after getting traded from Chicago. Now, the idea here is that when he went to the Rangers, that he, of course, wasn't 100%. We knew he was dealing with a bit of a hip issue, and there was some concern when the trade was made, and that he kind of feels like he has unfinished business there, considering that he wasn't able to give it his absolute best. And now that he's had the surgery and recovered, we saw last year with Detroit that he is a much better player and back to, maybe not his old self 100% in his heyday, but, considering his age, he's still a really effective player and had a real nice comeback season there with Detroit. So if he's not going to end up back in Detroit, which right now odds don't look good, the Rangers would be a very interesting place for him. Of course, he's going to want some term this time. We know that from the rumors are he wants to kind of settle in a place for a little while. He's obviously liked it there, was real keen on going to the Rangers in the first place, but obviously, like I said, it was a short-term deal. Didn't work out, considering where things went and he needed surgery. They didn't end up signing him, but when he was making his comeback and ended up going to Detroit, there was interest from the Rangers then as well. It just didn't work out for whatever reason. So wouldn't be shocking if Patrick Kane goes right back to where he was in New York. Of course, like he's got a chance to reunite with former teammate Alex DeBrincat in Detroit. Had a chance to reunite with Artemi Panarin in New York, and very well could end up there. A couple of players that he's had some of the most success with. So interesting to see where Patrick Kane signs on July 1st. On the trade front, a couple of teams we want to take a look at, one being Minnesota. There is reports today, again from Dave Pagnotta of thefourthperiod.com, indicating that the talks around young forward Marco Rossi have picked up substantially. We had talked earlier that he is a strong candidate for a trade. Doesn't mean 100% that the Wild are going to move him, but the belief is that they would like to get a similar age player if they can, but somebody maybe who plays a different style of game. Obviously, Rossi's not an overly big guy, but he's a really highly skilled player, and he can be productive in the right role in the right situation. There's no doubt he had a bit of I'd call it a breakthrough last year with Minnesota, and had a pretty solid campaign overall. Clearly, the trade rumors around him have kind of surfaced here since the end of the season. Now, like I said, I really suspect that if they do move him, they're going to want a similar age player, if they can, coming back that can maybe be a little bit more, possibly different position. Not that they have the strongest depth at the center position, but long term, I think they kind of have the idea who they see in their top center spots within the prospect pool, as well as Eriksson Ek in there as well. I think maybe they might want either a D or a winger, somebody that just plays a different position, and maybe somebody who can play a little bit more of a, maybe a bigger player, more physical player, a different element to their game. A couple of teams that are linked to Marco Rossi include a couple of Canadian clubs in Ottawa and Montreal. He played his junior hockey with the 67, so certainly a city he knows well. I'm not really sure that he would be what the Sens would be looking for. I'm a little bit surprised to see them linked to him. Not that he's a good player, but I just, with what they have on their system and on their roster already, I don't know that they really need a guy like him per se, but we'll see, I guess. Some other teams mentioned as well include the Utah Hockey Club, as well as the Philadelphia Flyers and the Calgary Flames. The Flames might be an excellent spot actually for Rossi. A couple other players actually both linked to the Chicago Blackhawks, and one being Jacob Chychrun, the other being Mitch Marner. Now, the talk with Chychrun, of course, we know the Senators are seriously considering moving him because of the, concerns over his next contract, and the fact they want to kind of change up their D a little bit. I think they'd prefer a right side defenseman, and ideally somebody who can be a little bit more cost controlled in the short term. Obviously, they're concerned that his next contract is going to be upwards around that $8 million mark, and they've already got two other defensemen making that. They'd like somebody, like I said, a better price range, and ideally plays the opposite side. Not that they don't like Chychrun, I think they really do. It's just maybe wasn't the greatest move bringing him in, given what they gave up. I mean, at the same time, I think they thought and hoped that he could play on his offside too, and that hasn't really worked out. They did try that, didn't really go the greatest, but not a given that he gets moved into Ottawa for sure. But it is something that's being under consideration, no doubt. But another team that hasn't been mentioned until today that we've heard is the Blackhawks. Given the strong connection between families here, of course, we know the Richardsons, head coach Luke Richardson, and the Chychruns are very close. Some have said they're actually related. I can't 100% confirm that they are relatives, but I've known for a long time that the families are close. The dads have been really close friends for a long time. Like obviously with Jacob's dad, Jeff, and Luke have been tight for a long, long time. So obviously going to a team like Chicago with somebody that the family's close with there makes some sense. Clearly a team that's on the rise and going to be looking to add some more NHL quality pieces to its roster, take a big step forward this coming year. We know that they want to do that. So again, I'm not sure what the return would be to the Sens. Obviously they have had dealings with Chicago recently, obviously with the DeBrincat deal. The Kevin Korchinski pick was what the first rounder that they gave to them in the DeBrincat trade. I don't know what they would be looking for in return. Looking at the Chicago roster, there's just not a lot of obviousness there unless it was a combination of picks and prospects. And like I said, they're going to want a right side defenseman. I don't really see Seth Jones being the answer in Ottawa, nor would I don't think he would necessarily want to go there because he does have trade protection. But again, same thing with the Mitch Marner talk. Now we've heard Dave Pagnotta say today that if Mitch Marner was approached about waiving his no-move clause to go to Chicago, that he thinks, from what he's heard, that Marner would be intrigued by that and likely would waive. Obviously, the belief is, now that, and I've said this before in recent days, that the Leafs have not really gotten to the point where they're 100% going either in the trade or the extend direction. Darren Dreger was on the radio saying that he believed that they'd rather sign him. I'm not convinced of that. But at the same time, we know that trading him is not the easiest thing either, considering he has a full no-move clause. But, given Chicago being an interesting destination, I'm not sure what the return would be. There was a long time ago talk, very big, right after the Leafs were eliminated. One of the first rumors we heard was maybe Seth Jones might be a defenseman they would target. I don't know if that's really the best fit, best player for them to kind of add to the mix there. But regardless of what the return would be, it's very intriguing and interesting to hear Pagnotta talk about the fact that he thinks Marner, based on what he's been told and heard, would be very much intrigued. So if the Leafs and the Blackhawks can figure out a deal and the Leafs go to Marner and say, hey, we have a deal with Chicago that we'd really like, would you consider that? The belief is he would say yes, according to Pagnotta. So again, looking at it, it's hard to imagine what the return would be. Clearly, it's fair to assume that if the Leafs do move Marner, they can either target a really good player or multiple players coming back that can help the NHL roster immediately. So you could see a trade maybe where they get a really good forward and a really good defenseman or something like that. Or do they make a trade more and actually take a futures-based package and then flip those to other teams or use the cap space in free agency to target other players to find, to change up the roster? They can go about this in multiple ways. Ideally, you think more of a hockey trade would be more of the preferred route, but that can be challenging. So again, hard to say how the Leafs and Brad Treliving decide to navigate this, but intriguing to hear the connection of the Blackhawks. We know that we've heard speculation that they really want to add talent around Connor Bedard, and like Pagnotta was saying, they had the concept and the thought of playing with one of the league's most young electric players, and he's only 27 years old, Marner is, so he could be that veteran guy who could help them and really work with the young talent coming up. And maybe he'd really like that. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know that I don't see Marner as being like a leader in that respect. But again, maybe it's something that might actually help him kind of take his game to another level. It's difficult to say. I think the idea of playing with Connor Bedard is intriguing to a lot of people. So we'll be curious to see what happens here. But I really think the Blackhawks would either have to be Seth Jones or a futures-based package. I think it'd be complicated for them to work out something that works for the Leafs to even go to Mitch and ask him to waive. But let me know what you think down in the comments and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.